Hello, in this lecture, we're going to explore database triggers. Database triggers are very similar in both logic and in structure and in the process of creating them to the stored procedures that we've already worked with in previous lectures. The primary difference about a trigger is a trigger does not have to be invoked or executed by a call from the user or some action on the part of a programmer to explicitly run the procedure. A stored procedure, we'd exec the procedure or we'd write a script and call it from that procedure. A trigger occurs when the event to which that trigger is linked occurs. So it automatically gets invoked by the database. And the kinds of things that can invoke a trigger are CRUD. When you create, update, or delete a record, so create CR, update U, delete D, the usual CRUD can cause a trigger to fire off. And then the other thing that we have to understand about triggers is we can, when we are firing off a trigger, when it is being invoked, it can act in advance of the event that called it, that triggered it, in advance of that being processed, or we can have it follow up when the thing that called it has executed. Okay, so depending on what our objective is with the trigger, we might want to have a trigger that processes after the event, or we might want to have it process before the event. And so a lot of that is going to depend on what we're trying to achieve with the trigger. Let's look at a simple trigger that's going to be invoked by the update. And we're going to also introduce another concept, and that is a system table called the inserted table. And the inserted table is very transient, very dynamic. And what it holds is simply the last thing that got inserted. And so we can go and look at the contents there in order to make a decision that's particularly useful in making decisions and doing processing contingent on the contents of the inserted table when a trigger is processing. Okay, so I'm going to not elaborate on some of the usual housekeeping because you should be fairly familiar with it by now. So we're going to start this off. I'll just paste it in. We're going to use the database. And here we're going to see if the object already exists, we're going to drop it and recreate a new version of it. So if it's been created before, we're editing and updating it, it's just going to get dropped, and then we'll go ahead and recreate that. Okay, so that's the usual housekeeping. And then let's take a look at the trigger that we want to create. And we'd like to create a trigger that is going to be an update trigger, and it's going to work when a record is updated in the products table. And we're again working in My Guitar Shop. So anytime an update occurs here, and it hasn't failed, it's happened, it's not quite closed yet, but it's happened, then this trigger is going to go to work. And so that's going to happen after update. So the update has gone in, it's been successful. If that had failed, then we wouldn't be having the dialogue about the trigger. But the update has gone in. It seems to have succeeded, but we want to apply some business logic and have something automatically happen when an update on the products table occurs. Okay, and if we look at our exercise statement, let's take a look at the problem statement, and I'll paste that in. Let me put that up here at the top, and I'll make it into a comment. create a trigger named products update that checks the new value of the discount percent column of the products table. Okay, so it's going to check the new value. So we're not trying to intercept it on the way in. It's going in, it's been inserted, and then we're going to double check it before it gets used. And this trigger is supposed to raise an appropriate error if the discount percent is greater than 100 or less than 0. And so let's take a look at what we need to do that. So here we're creating the trigger on the products table. It's going to occur after the update. And let's start with the first little bit of error handling that we need here. So if the discount percent that went into this inserted table, so we look at what just got inserted, if the discount percent is greater than or equal to 100, so if we're discounting more than 100%, that would not be a good thing, right? We're going to throw an exception. It's going to be the error code we're assigning to it. Again, the author here is using 50,001 because if you do a little reading on SQL Server, you'll find that you should start after 50,000. Everything below 50,000 is kind of reserved for SQL Server messages, system messages, and errors. And so you start at 50,001. In reality, we would try and give this a unique number with a unique meaning that is useful for the system that we are creating. And we keep a good book of the different error codes so that we could have meaningful errors that's going to be useful for as a reference for our maintenance programmers, our users, our help desk to understand if something is going wrong. We might use the same error message or error number for more than one place where that a given kind of error would occur, but the number we assign it should be pretty specific or maybe unique to the situation we're describing. So the discount process must be less than 100, okay? So our discount percent. Okay, so we don't want a discount percent to be greater, or less than or in this case, greater than 100. Okay, so more than 100% discount. 100% discount, it's free at that point, right? So more than 100, you'd be paying people to take the product. That would be not good. And so anytime we're going to have a subtracted percent reduction kind of thing, we would probably use this number. And again, in reality, we wouldn't use 50,001. We'd be adding new numbers for all that. But if we have a couple different kinds of discounts that might be applied, we don't want either one of them to be more than 100%. We might use the same error number, again, with a slightly different message, but it'd be the same sort of context of the error. Okay, so we don't need to belabor that further. So we're going to throw that message if this occurs. Okay, and we ought to test that so we see, well, if that happens, what happens to what just got inserted? Aha, let's find that out experimentally. Now we have another situation we need to consider, and that is, what if the number that is provided for discount percent, again, we go look and see in the inserted table what number was just passed in for that. What if it's less than 0? What if it's a negative number? We can't allow a negative discount percent. So we're going to throw this error and let the message, the discount percent must be a positive number, be returned back to the user screen or to the application that's calling it. And the application can then decide, do I pass that on to the user? Do I log that? What do I do with that? That's going to be decided at the application layer in your stack, because rarely are you using this from just a query client and interactively. But if you are, especially for testing, you'll be able to see it working. Okay, so there's two failures or two conditions that we want to fail, we want to trap against. And then what else do we need to do? Well, let's take a look here and walk through it. So failure number 1, Oops, here we go. Failure number 1, failure number 2, then what? If select discount percent from inserted is greater than or equal to 0, and it's also less than 1, okay, so that's an acceptable range. Then we go ahead and update products, set discount percent equal to select discount percent from inserted times 100. So we're scaling it out, so it's stored as whole numbers rather than decimals in the table for the percentage. And then where product equals select product ID from inserted. Okay, so you see this is really going from the inserted table, and now it's doing the quote unquote real insert. So how do we understand that? We're not actually rolling anything back. The transaction had done the insert, but it's gone to this middle place, this inserted table, and if it passes muster, we go ahead and really complete the rest of the insert. If not, if we had one of these errors so that this part doesn't get called, where it actually does the actual insert, then this is, then the error handling is all that happened. The actual update didn't happen, so we don't have to worry about rolling things back. Does that make sense? Okay, so now that that's created, let's go ahead and tell the batch to process. Go. And then we ought to do some things to test what we've just created. Let's go ahead and make sure that we can create the trigger. And so let's go ahead and run this whole mess. Bam. And I've got something wrong here. An expression of non-Boolean type specified in context or condition expected near new. Oh, that's funny. I forgot to comment that part out. So this is part of the problem statement. If the new discount percent is between 0 and 1, this trigger should modify the new discount percent by multiplying it by 100. That way, a discount percent of 0.2 becomes 20. So it's a little more human readable friendly. And again, this was supposed to be part of the problem statement. I had left it uncommented, so it appeared to be code. So let's go ahead and, oh, here's another part. Another part of the problem statement. Test this trigger with an appropriate update statement. Okay, so I think we've got all of our commentary properly commented out now, and this I think should run. Let's give it a shot. Okay, so it completed, but again, what did it complete? Well, what it's supposed to have done was to have created this trigger. And so let's come over here and hit the refresh on our Object Explorer. And then if we come into, in my guitar shop, come down, and this trigger is affiliated with what, the schema? No, it's affiliated with a specific table. We're creating this on products. So let's go to the products table and expand that out. And down here we have triggers, and we see, there is a products update, and that's what we're naming this trigger. So now this trigger exists. So, and you need to be a little bit careful when you start creating triggers like this, because they're going to change the way that the database behaves, and a programmer or a user who doesn't anticipate this behavior, implementation of these business rules, may say, well, I told it to make that discount 200%, which makes no sense, but I told it to, and it's not working. Why is it not working? Why is it doing something different than I expected? And so again, good to either provide them with error messages rather than just intercepting or failing it, and also, kind of let people know what the business rules are about, for instance, the scaling. Well, I entered 0.25, but it came out as 25. What's wrong? Well, nothing's wrong. It's behaving as it is intended to. So we need to reflect that appropriately in the documentation for our programmers and for our users, depending on who our audience is that's going to be impacted. And of course, if you need to, if you've inherited something that wasn't properly documented, you can always come in here, and if you come to this panel and say script the trigger out, create to script is create and send it to a new query editor window, you can then examine what was the code that was written that created that. So even if the documentation doesn't preserve this script, which it should, you can still get it back and analyze what's going on. Usually a meaningful name here, products update, is going to tell you what the what the trigger involves, and you probably would have a pretty good feel for it as a maintenance program if you're working on a system and you've been doing a lot of this. There tends to be a pretty good amount of consistency or shop standards for how you implement your business rules. But again, we really want to keep the documentation up to date and share that around, put that in the proper repository, whatever version control software or GitHub or whatever we're using to keep track of all the scripts that our system consists of. Okay. All right. So you should be taking this script that you've written and continue it and preserve the whole thing, because in the work product that I want you to submit for the real exercises, this is a parallel exercise, not exactly what you're doing, but very similar. I want to see not only the script that creates the triggers, but I want to see your scripting to exercise the triggers, and I want to see the screenshots of the results. To emphasize that this has already been created and is no longer needed for things to work properly. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that out of there. And now let's go ahead and fire up that trigger. And that trigger should occur anytime we do an update on the products table. And so let's try this. Update the discount percent for product ID 1 to 25. Well, let's start by saying select star from products and just take a quick look at what we have here. And right now we see product ID 1 has a discount percent of 30. So we're going to set that to 0.25. But remember, if the trigger fires off, it's not going to be 0.25 here. It's going to be 25.00 because it does the scaling for us. So let's try it and see. And this one, because it is a success, we don't expect to get any kind of message back other than completed. So we fire that off. It says, well, one row infected, completed. Why did we get this twice? Oh, remember, we're working with the inserted table before it passes the change through into the actual products table. But if we look here, select star from products, we should see, it is indeed 25% or 25.00% because it's scaled that up. So that's one way we know that that trigger succeeded. So let's see if we can check a failure. What is not allowed? Can I make this negative 25%? Give it a shot. Okay, and so we've generated our error message, 50,001. The discount percent must be a positive number. Now, let's see and convince ourselves of the fact that it didn't actually give us the error message, but go ahead and make changes. So if we execute the select star, we see, no, we're still at 25%. So that didn't change it to negative 25%, so that's fine. Okay, well, let's do this. What if we change the discount percent to 200%? Can I set it to 200%? My business rules say no, but if I didn't have a trigger, what's to enforce the business rule? Let's give it a try. Boom. The discount must be less than 100. I can't have 200. And again, let's select out and see. Nope, it's unchanged. Product ID 1, discount percent 25. Okay, that all seems fine. And now let's convince ourselves by cleaning up and putting things back the way they were that things are working fine. So let's make this 0.30 back to 30%, which is where we found it when we started looking at it. Execute that. One row affected, one row affected. All that seems fine. Execute. And yeah, we're back to 30%. Okay, so that is looking good to me. See you in the next lesson.